Good evening, Energy Rogue Nation. Welcome back to another weather discussion. Thank you all so much for tuning in. In tonight's video, we're going to be talking about the latest heating degree day forecast for the United States as we round out this last half of December here and get into the New Year's. If you do enjoy the video, be sure to like and subscribe and comment down below if you have any questions. I am a degree meteorologist and I'm more than willing to answer any weather question that you have, even if it's outside the domain of the nat gas energy space, which we talk about a lot here on the channel. So feel free, post your questions down in the comments below. And like I said, be sure to subscribe so that way you get notifications on when our videos go up. That being said, tonight, as I mentioned, we're going to talk about the United States in particular, and on Thursday, as we usually do, we will then turn our attention to some European weather. But I want to start here first. This is courtesy of WXRogue.com, which provides you the latest heating degree day outputs for some of the major models like the GFS and the NAM. This website, too, is completely free. You can check it out at WXRogue.com. Again, it's WXRogue.com, where we provide weather output and content, as well as data as it relates to the energy, nat gas, and agricultural markets. So be sure to check that out. It's completely free, and you don't have to pay a dime for it. That's pretty much what free means. Be sure to check it out. Take full advantage of it. It won't be free forever, so please, WXRogue.com. If you have any feedback on the website, happy to take that as well. Leave that down in the comments below. But circling back to what I wanted to start with here, and that is the population-weighted heating degree days by EIA region. So this graph actually provides the total degree day output based upon the GFS model. And keep in mind, these are updated twice a day. We are likely going to be moving to 4 times a day here soon, but these are updated quite regularly, along with, of course, corresponding to the model updates themselves. And whenever I frequent this website and I check these charts, sometimes these charts really speak 1,000 words. In other words, you can look at a chart like this and not have to look at a weather map to see what we're expecting or what the trend is going to be, right? For example, if we look at population-weighted heating degree days, you can see that we have a massive ramp up in our total degree days by the time we get to the December 21st, 22nd period. This is corresponding to our next cold blast that will be impacting pretty much the central and eastern United States. And of course, to some effect, the southern United States, but in terms of the strongest magnitude of cold from this next event, we're going to be looking more so at areas that have seen most of the cold throughout the month of December, and that is the Midwest, the Northeast, and the upper Midwest. But that's going to change beyond December 22nd. As you can see, that total degree day completely drops off like a rock by the time we get towards the end of the month. Pretty much between the 23rd and the 30th of December. We're going to talk about why that is in a moment, but I know for folks that are heavily concerned and who have stakeholdings within nat gas trading, you see something like this chart and go, oh boy, are we looking at last year's winter again? Are we now going back to that same mild temperature regime that we saw throughout much of the 23-24 winter season? You would be right in saying that, but you're going to find tonight that that's not necessarily true. We have different situation here, different circumstances. This is a different season. But certainly, a lot of folks in the weather community are looking at output like this and automatically just writing off the season. And I caution anybody that is doing that. I cannot stress that enough. I've stressed that to even our folks back at Energy Rogue, our current subscriber base, that same fact that just because we're going to have a pretty extendable mild to even above normal temperature regime across the United States, that does not mean that winter is done. So we'll talk more about that here in a moment, but I just wanted to show you this chart because I think this really sets the tone for the rest of this video on what we are expecting to see really over the second half of December. It's going to be a bit of a roller coaster ride, and I don't even have to tell you that because this chart pretty much represents a roller coaster. So, what a wonderful analogy for a graphical output. So let's head on over to Tropical Tidbits. This is a website that I use a lot, and folks, feel free to bookmark this website, tropicaltidbits.com. I do like to show the resources that I pull from so that way you yourself can access them. And here's the wonderful thing about meteorology today, without completely sidestepping tonight's discussion, is that we live in a world where there's a lot of data. And in some cases, that data is accessible, and in some cases, it's not. I can say that with meteorology and with weather model output, it's become a lot more accessible to you versus just even in the last 15, 20 years. I mean, hell, I remember back even in the 2000s, and I'm not even that old, but back in the 2000s, we relied a lot on the Weather Service. We relied on TV meteorologists. And now, because this data has become more accessible, you find that you can pull from this yourself. But the important distinction, though, in why I, as a meteorologist, still exist, is because while there's a lot of this data, it also comes down to what is important and what does it mean? Because there's so many different products you can pull from on websites like these, and it's so easy to get lost in a sea of data. So it's important to really pull the models that you want to cover that are relevant, but also from those models, the variables and the output that you are really looking for. In this case, we want to look at the ensemble, which gives us a general average or a statistical mean, which is the EPS, and we now want to look at the temperature anomalies because this gives us a gauge on the above versus below normal temperatures for areas across the United States. What areas are expected to see above normal for their season versus below normal? So let's dive into it. We have the EPS here. This model is as of 18Z. It's the latest run at the time of this video. And as you can see, we got a lot of red going on across areas in the United States that have been predominantly below normal throughout the month. And that includes specifically the central United States and even the Northeast. Now, that's going to change here as we head towards the 21st. You'll see that here on anomalies. Take a look. Here come those blues that show up by the time we get to the 21st. What a flip we see across these same areas. And a lot of that has to do with a clipper system that's going to follow right behind. So a low pressure that starts out in the Canadian provinces and dives southeast. That's going to bring some below normal temperatures to, once again, the central and the northeast. And even to some effect, the Gulf Coast states as well could see even some freezing temperatures too. That's something that we haven't really talked about here on the channel and really the last couple of days, but that is important to note. We have a pretty sizable population density in the south, and those are quite a few people that are going to be impacted by some of those colder temperatures as we head towards this weekend and even into the latter half of this work week. So keep that in mind. But the most, I guess I would say the area of concern would be the Midwest and the Northeast for these below normal temperatures by the time we get to, again, the late work week into the weekend. But then as we enter out of that and we get to early next week, by the time Christmas rolls around, hey, here come those above normal temperatures across the Midwest. These, it's this oscillating effect. We start out with these warm temperatures and then cold and then warm. And that wasn't necessarily the case to start out December. For those of you folks that have been keeping track, we have seen mostly below normal temperatures being consistent across the Midwest and the Northeast as we would expect with La Nina. But now we're getting back to more of this oscillating pattern, at least in the immediate short term. So that is sort of the latest on our temperature anomalies. And by the way, these above normal temperatures are expected to continue as we go through that last week of December and then enter into 2025. We'll also look at another interpretation of this, the GEFS ensemble. Remember, these ensembles are taking a statistical average. This one is of the GFS, and the other one we just looked at is the European ensemble. And we can see a very similar trend here with, once again, most year below normal temperatures entering pretty much the entire eastern United States by the time we get to that Friday, Saturday period. And then once we enter into next week and get towards the holidays, look at that. You got an absolute, I don't want to say the word scorcher, I'm going to say it, scorcher of an above normal temperature regime across much of the United States. And that, as I mentioned, is expected to continue as we enter into the new year. Now, the biggest question that I've gotten in much of the discussion that's taken place over on Energy Rogue, be sure to check out energyrogue.com, by the way, if you're interested in subscribing. One of the things that's been talked about is, all right, so we're going to be above normal. It's going to be way above normal for a lot of areas to round out December. When's winter coming back? And also, is winter even coming back to begin with? And my answer to that is a resounding yes. And I'll keep this explanation rather short. If you would like me to expand on it further, happy to take this offline. But what we expect to see in terms of our jet pattern is going to be pretty erratic. For example, if we head back here to like the 17th, and we'll even go to tomorrow, okay? Our jet pattern features high pressure out in the Pacific, so in the terms of ridging, and then you have low pressure out into the central and eastern United States in the form of what we call troughing. Because of that high pressure, that helps to displace cold air south across the Midwest and the Northeast, particularly, especially with La Nina. That is what's going to bring down that cold air as we head towards the 21st. But then what's responsible for that flip right here towards the holidays is we go from a ridge trough pattern to more of a zonal flow, meaning just westerly flow across the United States. Now, what does that mean? What makes that different? Well, that first pattern that I drew, which I'll draw here again, this ridge helps to displace cold air south, just like we talked about. But when you have more of a zonal flow across the northern Pacific, especially one that's more westerly, that pumps in a lot of Pacific air. Because remember, we're not bringing down air from the poles. We're bringing it from the Pacific inland. And as a result of that, you're expecting then to see more above normal temperatures. That pattern, though, and this is what gets back to the question, that pattern is not expected to last very long. And I know some of you out there are probably watching this going, oh, Brendan, you might be biting your tongue right now. I don't know, we'll see. But why I think that is not just because, I'm saying it out of thin air, but rather because of the pattern we're in. Look, we are in La Nina. La Nina tends to favor, climatologically, more of a polar jet that brings down colder air from the poles to the Midwest and Northeast. And we've already seen that this season. We've seen a relatively textbook La Nina pattern. Not a strong La Nina by any means. It's certainly a weak one. In terms of the jet pattern, it's been very similar to what we would expect. That's number one. Number two is because if we just know anything about weather, and we know anything just about the atmosphere in and of itself, is that it is not static. In other words, this high pressure out in the east central Pacific that's expected to form and be responsible for more of that zonal flow, I don't expect that to last long. And as a matter of fact, our climate models, which we'll show in a bit, also support that. They support a return to upper level ridging in the northern Pacific setting up again in the month of January. So those things in mind, that is why I personally have not changed my seasonal forecast, despite the extension of above normal temperatures lingering into that first few days of January. And to back this up further, we can pull up these same climate models, and we'll look here first at the CFS weekly. And as we head towards January, right, here is what the CFS is showing. Again, This is also showing you 2-meter temperature anomalies. We see very above normal temperatures forecasted for the Midwest and the Northeast to round out December as we head towards what would be, looks like January. Oh, this is weekly, sorry. As we get towards January, look at that trend here, guys. As we head towards the beginning of January, you see these temperature anomalies beginning to drop off. And that is corresponding to, like I said, upper level ridging setting up in the northern Pacific. That is just one model, but our other one, the CAN-SIPS, also shows to a similar effect that on the monthly chart, which is more of this below normal temperature regime setting up for areas we would expect climatologically for La Nina, which is the Northeast and the Midwest. In short, winter is not done. And also, one thing I didn't mention on the video, we haven't even had a stratospheric warming event yet. I won't go into detail about what that is. I'm happy to, again, offline. But stratospheric warming, just think of it as a catalyst to a Arctic blast. I'm not talking about just below normal temperatures. I'm talking about well below normal temperatures for those same areas that I've been highlighting tonight. And some of the climate models are hinting at that in January. Of course, as we know with climate models, they're not a silver bullet. They're not something that necessarily can be taken as gospel, and really no weather model can. But what's important is that those models are hinting at something that would be in line with what we expect. It also is something that we saw even last year. Our 2 weeks of winter that we had was actually derived from a stratospheric warming event. I would not be shocked in the slightest if we see that again, and there are some signals that are pointing to that, even outside of our climate models, as we head into January. So keep that in the back of your mind. Case in point, we are not done with winter yet. I'm very confident in that fact, but it is going to be well above normal once again for Christmas. We may not even have a white Christmas for a lot of areas in the United States, which is quite sad. But certainly, it may even be some short weather for my folks in the Midwest and the Northeast. You may be walking around in shorts for Christmas, and so will Santa Claus. We'll see. Listen, thank you so much for tuning in. Again, be sure to like and subscribe, share with family and friends, and we'll be back here on Thursday with another weather discussion. Take care.